This slide talks about our enrollment trends in the district. So we have had increasing growth really ever since we kind of bounced back from the pandemic drop-off that I think every district across the country experienced in that year that followed the pandemic. So we lost just at 200 students between the spring of 2020 when the pandemic broke out into the start of school that next year. And these numbers are from our official October 1 count each year, so it compares the same point of time year to year. But we bounced back very quickly from that. So by the next year, we were back up to within around 20 students of where we had been prior to the pandemic. And since that time, we have just continued to grow. So our October 1 count this year was 2944. Every year, the last couple of years, I think we're going to hit that magic 3,000 mark. We haven't yet, but that is certainly the direction that the trend line is going. And we have been at the high of Pryor enrollment historically since 2022. So this had been the previous high, the 2774, and then with that bounce back after the pandemic, we made it there. The 29 to 44 is really the reason that we are looking towards freeing up space across the district and adding some additional classroom space as well. I also like to talk about where we are on the 2022 bond. So the last time that we passed a bond in 2020 was in 2022, and we are finalizing those projects right now. So the majority of them are already complete, and we have 2 projects that are still in progress, and I'll talk a little bit about each of those. So the first projects that happened in the 2022 bond were finishing out the renovations at Lincoln and Jefferson Elementary School. So we had a new roof and new windows at Jefferson that completed that building's renovation. And then Lincoln had, as a larger campus, had a little bit more work to do. We had some interior classroom renovations that happened at Lincoln, as well as new roof and new windows on that campus. So, of course, Roosevelt is a relatively new school, and then the other 2 elementary schools have been completely renovated. We also built a new maintenance facility. We had really outgrown the maintenance facility that's right behind the middle school campus. And this maintenance facility allows us to have the space that we need for both all of our warehouse space for equipment and materials, but also space for our equipment and our painting crews and the plumbers and all of those kinds of things that go in to maintain the district. The signature project was certainly the stadium project, phase 1. That was the one that everyone wanted to know about from the minute that the bond passed in 2022 until we played the first game in it in August. And that was really the majority of the stadium was in phase 1. So we clearly used it all last football season. It's currently being used by our soccer teams, and that included our field, the concessions, restrooms, what it will be the visitors' locker rooms, but both teams used it this season. Obviously space for visitors and home stands. And then we also, throughout the bond projects, we include money for other items, like in this case, band instruments. So these are the instruments like your trombones and your tubas and baritones, things that families would not likely be able to buy on their own. So we invested in purchasing, refreshing our stock of those instruments as well. The 2 pieces that are still in progress, and the board had a chance to go on a board showcase event today. We went to all the different facilities in the district, and so they got to see these as well. We are at the punch list stage on the middle school project, and high school phase 4 will be finished in August. So we're concluding that 2022 bond work. The middle school remodel involved bringing that kind of 70s sunken living room feel of the media center. We brought that up to grade and really modernized the media center. We added on 4 classrooms at the end of the 6th grade hall, and then took in 2 classrooms to make space for that media renovation, as well as adding a teacher lounge space, which they had not had before, and 2 additional banks of student restrooms, so boys and girls restrooms that were needed for that campus as well. It also involves renovating the old maintenance space into new office space for our IT staff in the district, as well as a STEM lab for that middle school campus. The elementary schools had the STEM lab space, but we had not had room at the middle school until now to have a STEM lab at that campus. So that is the middle school project. And then high school phase 4 is a really exciting project, and I think people are gonna be surprised to see how much it encompasses once it opens in August. So that will be completed in August. This took the place of where the old practice gym was, but it has really expanded the athletic space there at the high school. So it includes a new wrestling room that's a 4-mat wrestling room, a new gym that will be used as volleyball's home gym, and it's also a storm shelter. So now the high school campus will have a storm shelter near the Burdick Center end, as well as the one that already exists in the Avery area. It also has space for pom and cheer, who have not had their own dedicated space before. That's going to be a great opportunity for so many of our students to use that new athletic space at the high school. So this is everything that we accomplished with the 2022 bond. And I know people always want to know, well, how are things going? Is that work happening? Has it progressed as promised? And all of our projects have come in very well as far as on the time schedule, as well as on budget. So we had a long-range plan that went from 2009 to 2022. And that really remade the face of Pryor Public Schools. So I don't know if you were here in 2008, but if you think back to what our campuses and what the district looked like in 2008 and what it looks like now, it's really been completely transformed. And that it came as a result of this comprehensive plan that really looked at what do we need for academics, what do we need for our fine arts, what do we need for athletics, and phased that out to make sure that we were covering all of those bases. So Roosevelt Elementary was built within this long-range plan. Adding the Lincoln Early Childhood Center happened. Adding the freshman academy space at the high school. So all of those large academic spaces happened, as well as moving forward the additions of the band hall and the choir space at the high school, the athletic facilities for baseball and softball, and then eventually, of course, the stadium. We did get a lot of questions in the 2022 bond issue about, well, this seems heavy on athletics. Why is that? And the reason was that they did do the major focus early on in that long-range plan on academics and fine arts before moving on to athletics. So that plan is complete though. So I got to come in and work to pass the 2022 bond issue that was already planned at the time that I was hired. So we did that during my first year, and then it was my job, along with the board, to talk about what do we do next? What's our next step? How do we make sure that we are both protecting our investment and continuing to grow and provide those facilities for students? The 2026 bond is the first stage of this new long-range plan. And it has 3 really key parts of the proposal. And the first part is a new middle school, which would serve 7th and 8th grade. So that would pull the 7th and 8th graders out of our existing middle school into the new middle school, which would leave space at the middle school to create a new intermediate school. And that would serve our students in 5th and 6th grade. I'm going to talk more about how that would all work on the configuration as we move through the slides. The stadium phase 2, as I mentioned, the one project that we just did not have a great bid day on in the 2022 projects was the stadium. And so we did cut the planned field house from that initial project in order to make sure that we were staying in budget. So we are coming back in phase 2 and proposing that field house as well as some practice space, and we'll talk more about what that might look like as well. And then ongoing facility maintenance needs. And you're gonna see that item in each one of the phases because we are in a different place now than we were with the initial long-range plan. So that initial long-range plan was really looking at focusing on building, replacing, adding, and we're now looking at some of those projects happened in 2010, 11, 12. That's actually, even though it's hard to believe, that has been quite a bit of time. So we are also including some money in each one of these phases that will help us keep up the facilities that we've already invested in. And things that can be paid for in that are things like HVAC replacement, new roofs, parking lots. It's dumbfounding what a new, nice concrete parking lot that's going to last multiple years costs these days. So things like that are included in that ongoing facility maintenance. Then looking forward, the next bond issue would be in 2030, and that would include a high school classroom addition, and that would allow between 2026 and 2030 for us to address the growth that we're seeing in student population all the way from elementary through high school. We're also looking one of our only athletic programs that doesn't have space of its own right now is our tennis program. So we have both boys and girls tennis. It's quite successful. They've been really doing well on our meets this year. They use the city courts, which we really appreciate that city partnership, but they don't have locker room space or team room or anything like that of their own. Or we would like to also keep them from having to travel from the high school into the city court. So we're looking at a tennis addition there, as well as another investment in band instruments, that ongoing facility maintenance, and then another item that we can invest in with bond dollars is instructional technology. So we've included that in the 2030 bond proposal as well. And then in 2034, if this trend continues, by that time with the enrollment, we would anticipate we would need to add an additional elementary school. And there have been lots of questions, well, where would it be? What would, all those kinds of things. We anticipate using the old stadium site, which we do. There's questions about that too. It's like, I thought the city owned that, not the actual stadium piece. They do own the baseball field behind the stadium, but the district owns that stadium property. So we would look at a new elementary school there if those trends have continued. But again, these are plans, but they're not set in stone. So the future boards would look at the needs and make a determination about what's proposed. And if that is indeed what our need is, then that would be the signature project of that bond proposal, along with the facility maintenance and the instructional technology costs. So let's look at the projects that are in this one. So this is a rendering of what the front of the middle school might look like, and we have some other drawings as well in the next couple of slides. And so again, this would address student population growth, and it would address it in a couple of different ways. First of all, of course, we would build it with enough room that we could anticipate it serving well for student growth at that 7th and 8th grade level. But by allowing 5th and 6th grade to then use the existing middle school campus, that building is pretty tight for 3 grades at our current class size, but it would be roomy for 2. So that would give us plenty of room to expand at the intermediate level. And by pulling 5th grade out of the elementary schools, that would free up 4 classrooms at each of our larger elementaries and 2 at Jefferson. So that frees up a lot of space all the way from pre-K through 8th grade for our growing student needs. This is located, we own the property right across the street from the stadium. So we would build this school there, which is also nice because it would put all of our secondary campuses in close proximity, which can, particularly with athletics, we spend a lot of times busing kids back and forth from middle school to the high school campus, and that would save us time on that process. And I've already mentioned about the new configuration for grade levels. This is a bigger picture of what that campus might look like from the front. So it is set back off the street, and I'll show you another map. I know one of the concerns has been about traffic on 9th Street. So this site has been designed to pull a lot of traffic off for drop-off and pickup traffic, both on the bus side as well as car riders. So it would sit back a little bit from 9th Street, give us plenty of room for that traffic, as well as serve as overflow parking on game nights for the stadium, because it would be directly across the street. And this is another site map. So right here is Ninth. The football stadium sits right here. That picture was taken obviously before they built the stadium, but it's basically right here. Then this is Oklahoma Street. The drop-off and pickup lane for car riders would be off of Oklahoma. There is also another way to get out of the campus that direction. You could go down Oklahoma rather than coming onto 9th Street. And then this would be where our bus drop-off would be. The classroom wings are 2-story classroom wings. The rest of that would be predominantly 1-story. The gym, of course, would be a regular height gym, so that would also have a higher space. We also like that the classrooms are back towards the rear of the property, which is a safety piece as well. Then the second project is the stadium project, phase 2, and as I mentioned, we had put off the field house portion. This will sit at the opposite end from the video board, so it will basically enclose the stadium. So there's the video board and visitors locker rooms and concession stands. So this would be on the north end, and this picture shows the field house with a indoor facility behind it. That indoor facility will be an alternate. So we did this same thing when we were working on the project that is the high school athletic edition. We bid the wrestling room as an alternate to see how the bids came back, make sure we had money for the projects. We did in this case, which was great. We plan to do the same thing with the practice facility, whether it's an indoor one or just an additional practice field. And I've got a picture that shows the other option as well. But the field house would serve both football and soccer, our 2 programs that use the stadium facility, and would provide locker rooms for those teams, team meeting rooms, a weight room that would be shared, just like the athletic training room would be shared. That's for injuries and things like that. And then hospitality space. So that's going to be a facility that I think will be very useful for both our teams that won't have to be dressing out at different places where they're practicing and playing, as well as for the community with that hospitality space. In addition, we are looking at moving our band bleachers. Currently, we have the band under the video board area. We want to move them across onto the visitor side so that they'll be playing towards the home stands. When I went to games, I could always hear the visitors band better than I could hear ours because they were playing the opposite direction. So we're looking at that. That will free up space for the student section to move under the video board, and that space that was reserved for students on the home side will become additional home seating. So I think that will be helpful all around for the stadium piece.
Quick
Go ahead, yes.
Is there shelter protection in that facility?
So the shelter is actually already present. The visitors' locker rooms, which are behind the video board, and we did use those as home and as visitors this year. That is a shelter. It is not big enough to shelter everyone at a game, but it's big enough for any students who would be here during the school day to shelter were there to be a storm. So this is the alternate view, and you can see without the indoor facility. So that shows the field house facility there at the north end zone with just a practice field behind it. So this would be the alternate if the indoor facility is not feasible. We hope that just like we were able to add that alternate last time when we were talking about the wrestling room, we certainly hope we're able to do the indoor practice facility. That facility can be used not only by soccer and football, but also by band during inclement weather when they're needing to practice on a football field. And then there's always the question of, and this is all great, so what does it cost? And the answer to that is always more than we would imagine, but the good news is on the next slide as well, but I'll go ahead and say it. This is a no tax increase proposal. So we are able to propose all these options without raising taxes because we are both actively paying off existing bonds and our valuation in the district continues to grow. So the more that grows, the more it spreads it out across, all of the different entities, both personal and business properties in the district. So this also does include the borrowing costs. So as much as people say, I'd love to say, well, we're a public school, why should we have to pay interest? But no banker so far has agreed to that. So these are the costs with the interest amount in it as well. So it comes in at just over $98 million would be the cost, with the bulk of that being the new middle school. And then I love this slide because we work closely with a bond consultant who does bonds all across the state. He's really good at his job, and he always projects for us what he would anticipate that the millage rate would be based on what we have happening with the bond issues. So the blue is what the projections have been since 2019, and the yellow is what our taxpayers have actually paid. So we have consistently been below the projection of what the bond consultant anticipates. And again, that is because of the growth that we have in the school district with our property values. And we have a number of projects happening that lead us to believe that this will again be the trend. So we anticipate again that this will not raise people's school taxes. And I always like to say that there are other taxing entities which I can't control, but school taxes will remain stable if this bond issue is passed. The vote is Tuesday, April 7th. And I also like to remind everyone, because this can be confusing sometimes here in Pryor, anyone who lives in the school district is eligible to vote in this election. So like me, I live right outside the city limits, so I can't vote for mayor or for a council person, but I can vote in this election because I live within the Pryor Public School District. So that's something, if you have friends who are wondering about that, as long as they live in the school district, they are eligible to vote in this election.